Good evening. I've been expecting you. It's a bit of a creepy intro. So yeah, it is now over. The season is now over. This is a poor intro to the video, but I'm going to quickly review. I'm going to try and keep it to 30 seconds per team, but it's definitely not going to be that. So if it runs over too long, I'm going to split it into parts. So if the video just ends randomly, it's not an editing error. I just decided to cut it into 2 or 3 parts. But I thought I would quickly share my brief thoughts on each team in the AFL without any planning. I've written nothing down. I'm literally just looking at the ladder and remembering what they did this season and judging each team on what they did. I'm going to start with the Premiership winner, then the runners-up, then the prelim finalists that lost, then the semi-finalists, then we'll go 9th and below. That's how we're going to do it. So let's start with the Premiers. Collingwood! The Collingwood, I don't need these to talk to you. The Collingwood Magpies. They were first the whole season. They were tested 3 times in the finals. Yes, all 3 games they could have lost potentially, but they passed all 3 tests. They won all 3 games. So, plaudits. Give credit where credit is due. Collingwood were magnificent. They were the best team all season. They were the benchmark. And ultimately, the best team the entire season won the flag. So, there should be no surprises there. People might be complaining about the grand final at the end. Obviously, there was a controversial advantage decision. I do think it probably should have been a free kick, but having said that, I can kind of see why they played on. But the fact that Brisbane had no idea it was a free kick and played on, that's what makes it a bit like if Brisbane hadn't, if it looked like they knew what was happening, then I don't think it would be as controversial. But I can see why it's controversial. But I don't feel like the result was because of the umpires. I don't see it that way. I think there were some interesting decisions on both sides. Trust me, I wanted the Lions to win. I wanted that more than anything. They're my favourite team after Hawthorn. I support Hawthorn. I don't support anyone else. But after Hawthorn, I like the Brisbane Lions the most. So I wanted them to do it. I don't like Collingwood. I'm just like, yes, let's go. But I just can't bring myself to blame the umpires at the end for that. I don't see it that way. But again, Collingwood, great season. They were fantastic. Again, they were the best team. Yes, they had a few down moments here and there. Even regular season, they were great most of the season. Towards the end, they lost a few games. I get that, but they were still the benchmark. And in the finals, Melbourne could have beaten them. Sure, Melbourne had a lot of scoring kicks, more scoring shots than Collingwood, but that's not Collingwood's fault. It's not their fault Melbourne decided to not kick straight. And then the following, 2 weeks later against the Giants could have beaten them. But in the end, it was just too much for the Giants. I think they got a little bit... I'm not using it as an excuse, but I think the Giants were a bit tired, especially towards the end. They had a few good minutes in the last quarter, that's about it. But Collingwood passed that test. They did well to win that game as well. Then the grand final. In the grand final, both teams played well pretty much the entire game. I think maybe the Lions had a slow first few minutes, and the Magpies had a few slow moments as well in the second half. But overall, as a whole, both teams just went at it, gave it their best, and the best team won. That brings me on to Brisbane. They were the second best team. The main reason they got there was their Gabba form, not lost at the Gabba all season. And you got to give credit because their finals record has not been good until last year. Before last year, up to 2021, they finished second twice, they finished 4th. They didn't do much. They got to the prelim, sure, once, went out in straight sets. They were largely poor in the finals. But last year, I think they were quite impressive. I saw something in them last year. I just thought to myself, yes, they finished 6th, which is lower than the last 3 top 4 finishes. But looking at their games against Richmond and Melbourne last year in the finals, they were impressive. 2 close games that they were tested in, and they could have lost, but they were strong enough to win mentally. And I just looked at them last year and I thought to myself, they're not going down, they're coming back up again. And I was right, apart from winning the flag. I predicted them to win the flag last September on the off chance, because I saw something in them and I thought to myself, let's do this prediction. Almost got it right, 5 points away, but they weren't much improved. They finished second again. Again, the home record is the main thing. At the MCG, not really a good enough record, to be honest. I know people would bring up the Melbourne game. Yes, they only just lost by a point, but context matters. In the last quarter against Melbourne, they completely capitulated. They had a decent lead with 5 minutes left. That has to be said. They just needed one more goal. They couldn't get it. They had an entire quarter to get one goal. They couldn't do that. So the MCG record was definitely questionable. So going into the grand final, I just thought to myself, the Magpies are the favourites, but I think they'll win. And I hope I'm wrong. But in the end, they actually turned up. They actually did turn up. Yeah, they were great all season at the Gabba. Away, not so much. In the finals, 2 finals games at the Gabba. You could argue that Port Adelaide just fell off completely, and Carlton were just too tired in the end, and weaker as well. Brisbane were a much stronger team than Carlton. But having said that, they were still very good big wins. Like, they showed that when they can hit top gear, they can beat anyone. It's just a question of, can they do it away, especially at the MCG. And they did do it. They didn't win, but they took Collingwood. They took the best team in the comp in their own backyard at a ground where they are not good at winning, and they took them all the way to the end. So there's something there. This loss could either be bad or great for them, because they could lose confidence. I know they haven't been blown out like other teams like Adelaide, like the Giants, like Sydney. It's not like they've been like completely humiliated to the point where they'll lose all their confidence. It's not like that. But still, losing by a few points can still set you back. So you never know. I mean, the Eagles won the flag, actually. That's a bit different. But still, losing the flag by a few points does not mean you'll be back next year, but it can mean you can be back next year. I think they can see that they are almost there. They were 5 points away from the flag. Either they look at that and they come back stronger and challenge again next year, or they lose confidence and they fall off. I hope it's the former, not the latter, but there you go. I said 30 seconds per team. It's been 7 minutes. I've gone through 2 teams. On to Carlton. Carlton, I think, had a great season overall. The start was okay, and then they just dropped off completely. They looked completely down and out by, like, I think round 15 or 6, something like that. There was a round, I think it was round 15, where you had Carlton and GWS like 14th and 15th, something like that, and they both made the prelims eventually. So they turned the seasons around quite well. Carlton, after last year's capitulation, where you thought they would make the finals, but they missed out in the last round. It looked like it was happening again this season, just earlier in the season, but they recovered from it. They ended Port Adelaide's streak, they smashed Collingwood, they beat Melbourne, they beat all these big teams, went on this great run, apart from the last round against GWS, but in that game they already secured 5th, so I think that's part of the reason why they lost that game. But they were brilliant from like somewhere. The last few rounds, they were absolutely brilliant in that, you know what I mean, in that period. I'm trying to think I'm trying to remember what rounds they were without actually looking at the fixture. That's the whole point of this video, just telling you off the thoughts of my head. But there was a big period, obviously, where they were down and out, and then they had this great run that got them into the 8 and got them 5th, which was brilliant for them. And then they won 2 finals. That's the most impressive bit. They've not been there for 10 years. So to come in and not only beat Sydney, but then go and beat Melbourne the following week was pretty bloody special. So fair play to them. Fair play to them. The Giants, another team that turned the season around. Many people expected them to not do that well at the start of the season, including myself. But they proved pretty much everyone wrong, the vast majority. And people keep spreading this narrative that the people thought Giants would do well. No, everyone had them like 13th and below. Like, no one had them that high up. But maybe so. No one's an overstatement. Not no one, but like a minority of people had them in the 8. Most people did not. That was the expectation. They were not expected to get that high up. And in round 2, they lost to the Eagles. The first 12 rounds, they won like 4 games. So like, it was already proving right. Like, people's expectations were proven right in the fact that they weren't doing that well. They did not look like a finals contender until like round 17, 18. At that point, you thought to yourself, oh, they might make the 8 here. It's actually possible. But from that point on, when they were down and out of Carlton, they turned their season around. You know, they were not even in contention for the 8s, but they turned it around completely, went on this crazy streak, and they made the finals, and they looked like they could actually win the flag. Like, that's the even more impressive thing. They looked good. Now, they did play St Kilda and Port Adelaide. Neither team played like they belonged there, to be honest, but they were still very good in both games. And they almost did it to Collingwood. They almost went to the backyard of the best team in the comp. Again, not again, but I said the Lions are not good at the MCG. Neither are the Giants. their record there isn't great either. They set the record this year for most grounds where they got a win at, and they only won at the MCG in round 24. Round 24 was the first MCG win. Granted, they don't play that often, but still, they set the record for most grounds won at in a single season for one team. And the MCG, they only ticked that off in the last round. And that record's quite crazy because they didn't win at the Optus and they played West Coast. And yet they broke the record for most grounds won away at. So, but that's part of the reason. Like, Brisbane did well mainly because of their home form. The Giants did well, I think, mainly because of how good they were away. The fact that they could compete anywhere, any place, anytime, any place. We got you. They almost had Collingwood, but it wasn't quite there. But I think they could potentially... I mean, I think they'll definitely be in the 8 again next year. But I think they'll be possibly top 4 next year. I think that could definitely happen. So, fair play to the Giants. On to the losing semi-finalists. Both of them were pretty embarrassing, let's be honest. Let's start with Melbourne. Out on straight sets for the second year in a row. It's not really acceptable. I know they only just lost to to Collingwood and Carlton. But if you look at the actual games, a lot of shots missed. I know, like, some decisions they might put on the umpires. Yeah, the umpires did make some dodgy decisions in both games. But that's not why they lost. They lost both games because they couldn't kick straight. That was ultimately why they went out. They looked good in some parts of the season. Remember, before they beat Collingwood only lost one game all season, and that was to Brisbane at the Gabba, who win every game at the Gabba. Apart from Brisbane at the Gabba, Collingwood had won every game up to the point they played Melbourne, and Melbourne beat them. So that was pretty significant. Melbourne showed they were capable of winning a big game, and they could be a serious, genuine contender. But finishing 4th, going to the finals against Collingwood and Carlton, both games they could have won. But, you know, when you have that many scoring shots and you don't take advantage of it, failure happens. So that's just how it is. Port Adelaide, pretty bad. When you think about it, you know, they were top 2 the entire season. They were not guaranteed, sorry, obviously not, because they slipped down to 3rd. But they were clearly a top 2 team. Brisbane weren't touching them. Melbourne weren't touching them. Only Collingwood were better. Like, they were that good for most of the season. They went on a big win streak. And then the turning point, losing to Carlton. From that point on, it's like they turned into a different team. And it's not just them. Like, I'll get onto Essendon soon because they're very similar in some ways. They turn into a different team. Just one result turned them, just changed them completely. I don't know what happened. You guys will know better than me. If you know your footy, let me know, because they look like a genuine. Like, people were saying to me, Port Adelaide Collingwood Grand Final. That's what everyone was. Not everyone, but a lot of people were saying that. A significant amount of people were saying that. We went from that to whatever they were in the finals. It didn't just start in the finals. In the regular season, it started. They started playing poorly in the regular season, and I'm sitting there thinking, what on earth happened to Port Adelaide? I don't know if it made no sense, because I've seen them slip down before. Like, it might be just in their DNA, because I remember, like, 2017 and 2018, I think, there were 2 consecutive seasons where Port Adelaide were in the 8, comfortable in the 8, doing well. Then they slipped down. I think one season they slipped down to, like, 6th, and the other one they slipped down out of the 8 completely. One was a season when they lost to West Coast in week 1, one of the best finals games ever, and that was 2017, I think. So I think it's 2017, 2018. 2 seasons where they looked very strong and then slipped down. This one, yeah, they still finished 3rd, but it's perhaps one of the weakest 3rd place teams in a while, because they completely fell off. Performance-wise, they looked very beatable. To be honest, I just don't know what happened to them. Then they turn up in the finals and they played well against Brisbane for a half. They were good. They threatened Brisbane quite a lot. Second half, Brisbane started dominating in the 3rd quarter, and then the game was gone. But you can excuse that for now, because it's like, okay, they played well in the first half, but Brisbane are too good. They wanted to win every time at the Gabba. Okay, let that go. Against the Giants, yes, the Giants are also playing better than them at this point in the season, but they were so poor. Like, they're in their own home at the Adelaide Oval, and they're just not turning up at all. Like, the players have not turned up. The fans have turned up. There's an atmosphere. The players have not. And by the second quarter, the fans are silenced because the Giants has hit like 6 in a row. Season's done. Whatever happened, that team that was clearly in second for most of the season, that was not the team that turned up in the finals, and I guess in the second half of the season generally. I don't know what happened to them, but you guys will know better than me, so please explain, because I am very confused. Sydney! Only there because of the umpires. The goal umpire against Adelaide. The Crows should have been there. The Crows looked very strong. I don't know, like, I don't think they would have gotten past, like, people think they would, I don't know if anyone said it, but I'm pretty sure someone said that it would have been, possibly would have gotten quite far in the finals. I wouldn't say that's a guarantee, but I think at least they might have won a final and then lost in week 2. I think that's more likely to have happened. The point is, they would have been a threat. They would have been interesting. Didn't happen. But Sydney did make it at Adelaide's expense, and even though they made it a close game, I think it was mainly a close game because Carlton had nerves on them. But Sydney were largely poor most of the season. Obviously, they got smashed in the grand final last year, so it tends to happen to teams that get smashed in the grand final. I get that. They started, like, I don't think they started great, but they were doing all right. They were, like, performing, getting some wins. Then they got smashed by Geelong again. The exact same team beat them by, I think, an even bigger margin, and that ruined their confidence. And I guess it's understandable. They slipped away, I guess, just like Carlton did. Except it wasn't like Carlton, I think, were choking a bit. Obviously, they recovered. Sydney was more like getting smashed by them. They were demoralised more than anything. So they were having a bad season, but just like Carlton, just like the Giants, they had a great recovery. Went on a nice streak, and they went to the air. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but in the end, they only made it because of that blunder. So it is what it is. Also, that blunder also eliminated multiple teams as well. So yeah, it was a bad umpiring decision, but at the end of the day, the Swans shouldn't have been there, and I feel like they weren't ready either. I feel like they weren't ready. Yes, they were in the grand final the previous year, but they were not ready for this year's finals, I don't feel. Speaking of not ready, St Kilda. I really like them. I really like them because they've not won a flag in a long time. I want to see them do it because we're in the era of ending droughts. Richmond, Western Bulldogs, Melbourne. But I got to bring this up because people think I hate Richmond. When they won the flag in 2017, that was pretty cool. I was singing Yellow and Black along with them in 2018, and for some reason, 5 years later, people think I hate them. Nah, it's just that their fans are easier to rattle, so sometimes you say some... Like, I put them 9th in my predictions, and people are like, how dare you! We'll get to that in the video where I react to my predictions. Actually, I'll save that. But where was I? Yeah, ending droughts. St Kilda, it's like the next on the list, right? Richmond, Western Bulldogs. Who was the other one? Melbourne. I just thought, hey, St Kilda are next, and they looked good at the start of the season. First, 6-7 rounds, they looked very strong. They won quite a few games. Against Collingwood, they lost by a goal, I think, in the end. Although they were a few goals behind, but they got a couple last 2 minutes. That's context matters. But still, they still gave Collingwood a bit of a scare, right? They looked good. They looked very good. I don't want to take credit, but ever since Hawthorn beat them, they haven't looked the same. I feel like from the Hawthorn result onwards, they hadn't played well at all until like round 23. Like they were limping, I felt, throughout the season. They were getting some wins here and there. But overall, I don't think they were performing that well. I don't think they had one good performance between the Hawthorn game and the game they beat Geelong. That game they beat Geelong, they were very good. And against Brisbane, they lost by 2 goals. I think that was partly because Brisbane weren't scoring that great. But still... not many good performances, but I think this great start they had, that was the main reason they even got in the 8. I think that has to be said. In the end, I know this is probably harsh, but I think they wasted the final spot. And to be fair, so did Port Adelaide. It's not just them. I'm going to say Sydney as well. But I think the Saints wasted the final spot. The Giants came along, rolled them over like it was nothing. And I know the Saints came back towards the end, but it was too late by then. I feel like another team, maybe Adelaide, would have done better against the Giants. I'm not saying they would have beaten the Giants, but at least would have done better. I think St Kilda, yes, they made the 8. Obviously, you make it, you get enough points, you deserve it. But in the finals, they look like genuine pretenders rather than contenders. But there was a good team in there. First 7 rounds, there was a very good team in there. it slipped away. So it is what it is. And now we've reviewed the top 8.
Let's take it slow. Where you go, I go too. And if you hit the bottom, I'm going down with you. Let's take it slow. Who cares where we go?